All right, so get ready because today we're going deep on a case that's really going to give you chills. It's the story of Jose Sifuentes,
Oh, yeah.
a serial killer who was terrorizing Dallas, Texas, back in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Hmm.
And the thing that makes this case even crazier
Yeah.
is that he actually managed to escape to Mexico and lived as a fugitive for, 16 years
Wow.
before he was finally brought to justice.
That's incredible. I mean, it really raises a lot of questions, not just about the crimes themselves, but how does someone disappear like that?
Yeah, exactly.
Rebuild your whole life and avoid being caught for so long. It's really fascinating.
It is, and we've got some really good material to work with today.
Okay.
We've got excerpts from Cifuentes' Wikipedia page,
Mm-hmm.
and we've also got some really in-depth news articles as well.
Interesting.
So let's start with the crimes, right? Let's paint a picture of what actually happened. Now, Cifuentes, his victims were all women that he met at bars and clubs,
That's scary.
which, hits close to home for a lot of people.
Absolutely. And it just makes the whole case much more, unsettling
Yeah.
because it could happen to anyone. And his first victim was Maria Perales. She was only 20 years old.
Yeah.
And can you imagine?
It was February of 1998 when her body was discovered.
So young.
And the details they're really disturbing. She was sexually assaulted. She was strangled.
Oh, my gosh.
And then, get this, she was run over by a car.
Run over by a car?
Yeah.
That's really strange. What do you think that means? Like, was that deliberate?
It makes you wonder, right? Was he trying to, stage an accident? Or was it just this final act of, rage?
Right.
I mean, it's a chilling thought.
Yeah.
So then, just a few months later, in June of 98, the body of another young woman was found. This time, it was 23-year-old Erica Olivia Hernandez.
Hmm.
And once again, it was the same pattern, right? The rape and the strangulation.
Like a signature.
Yeah, and her body was discovered in a gravel pit.
Oh.
Which is it's just another layer of, I don't know, coldness to it.
You can only imagine the fear.
Yeah.
That must have just gripped Dallas at the time.
Absolutely.
Two young women dead, predator on the loose. It's terrifying.
It is. And then it seems like he just disappeared for a while.
Oh.
The next crime that we know of wasn't until 5 years later, in May of 2003. And this time, the victim was Veronica Hernandez. She was 27.
Okay.
And this is really where the case starts to unravel.
So what happened?
Well, her body was found right outside of the auto repair shop where Cifuentes worked.
Oh, wow.
So, talk about brazen.
Right under their noses?
Yeah.
Wow. It almost as if he wanted to get caught. Like, what was he thinking?
Right. It's like he was leaving breadcrumbs. But here's the thing. There was a witness.
A witness.
Yes, and the witness had seen Veronica with a mechanic named Jose.
Okay.
So they arrest Cifuentes.
Mm-hmm.
And get this, he confesses
Oh, wow.
to the rape and murder of Veronica Hernandez.
So case closed, right?
You would think, right?
Yeah.
But wait, there's a twist.
Okay, I'm listening. What happened?
He was able to pode the bail.
Wait a minute. He confessed to murder.
I know.
And they let him out on bail. How is that even possible?
I know. It's crazy, right?
Doesn't make any sense. So what did his lawyers do?
Well, I mean, that's our legal system.
Yeah, I guess so. Presumption of innocence and all that, but still.
It's innocent until proven guilty.
Right.
But at this point, they were probably trying to, get a lesser sentence or, maybe even get him off. Who knows?
So he's out on bail. What happened next?
Well, shortly after he posted bail, he disappeared.
They what?
He disappeared.
He skipped town.
Vanished without a trace. Gone.
Wow. I mean, where could he go?
Across the border to Mexico.
To Mexico. Okay.
Yeah. He became a ghost.
Jeez.
And he left behind so many unanswered questions.
So wait a minute. What about the DNA tests? Did they ever get those results back?
Oh, yeah, they did. And guess what?
What?
They linked him not only to Veronica's murder,
Uh-huh.
but to Maria and Erica's as well.
So now they're dealing with a serial killer who just vanished into thin air. What a nightmare for the police.
This is the stuff of nightmares for law enforcement, right? You've got this guy, he confessed, he linked to multiple murders.
Yeah.
And he just slips through your fingers.
And he's in another country.
And he's in another country. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. Talk about a setback. But I guess this is also the beginning of a pretty big manhunt, right?
Right.
Like, how long did that take?
Oh, it was years.
Years. Wow. We've got to talk more about that.
We've got a lot more to uncover, so stay tuned. We're just getting started.
This is crazy. I can't wait to hear what happened next.
Okay, so Cifuentes just vanishes into Mexico. He's gone.
Just like that.
Poof. How does someone stay hidden for 16 years, especially with the FBI looking for them?
It's tough. I mean, think about it. International investigations, different legal systems,
Right.
language barriers. I mean, Mexico's huge.
Yeah.
And then you've got the possibility of corruption. I mean, it's really a whole different ballgame.
Right. Right. And it's not like he's just, laying low. He's got to be actively trying to stay off the radar.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. New identity, maybe even changing his appearance,
Yeah.
trying to blend in. It's like trying to find a needle in a haystack.
It is, but they never gave up. I mean, that's pretty amazing.
It is. It really shows you how dedicated they were to this case. I mean, 16 years.
Yeah, it's a long time. What kept them going?
Well, I think a few things. First of all, you can't ignore the seriousness of the crimes. We're talking about 3 murders, a serial killer. There's a lot of pressure to bring him to justice.
I mean, you can't just let someone like that get away.
Exactly. And then you've got the families of the victims. They're in crime.
Yeah.
They need closure, and they deserve justice. So I think that was definitely a big motivator for law enforcement. They weren't just chasing a suspect,
No,
They were fighting for these women.
it's true. And for their families. Yeah, that makes sense. Gives it more meaning.
Yeah, and I think there's also a sense of professional pride involved, too. I mean, agencies like the FBI, they have a reputation to uphold.
Of course.
They don't want to let a case like this go cold.
Especially when he got away,
Exactly. So it becomes a matter of principle. No one is above the law.
Wow. Okay, so for 16 years, they're following leads,
Mm-hmm.
interviewing people, going through evidence. They had to work with Mexican authorities too, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. It must have been incredibly difficult.
And it must have taken forever.
Oh, yeah. Countless hours, bureaucracy, cultural differences, probably a lot of dead ends along the way.
Sounds exhausting. But eventually their hard work paid off. In 2019, they finally, the FBI, Dallas PD, and the DA's office, they all worked together and they found him.
They found him where?
In a small town in Mexico called San Vicente de Gonzales.
Wow. After all these years, what was he doing?
He was living a normal life, blended right in.
Can you imagine? Like, the shock.
It must have been surreal.
Totally. After all this time, they find him.
It's pretty incredible.
A real victory, All that dedication. But it wasn't over yet.
Right. They had to get him back to the U.S.
Exactly.
So that brings us to extradition. What is that exactly?
Extradition is basically the formal process where one country, in this case Mexico, hands over a person to another country, the U.S., so they can face criminal charges.
Okay.
It can get pretty complicated, lots of procedures, treaties, all that.
So it's a lot more than just like grabbing someone and putting them on a plane.
Oh, yeah. It's a whole legal battle. You have to have a really strong case, And then, even then, it depends on the other country.
And their relationship with the U.S.
For sure.
Which, with Mexico, it's complicated.
It is.
So how long did it take to get Sifuentes back to Texas?
Well, thankfully, the Mexican authorities cooperated.
Really?
They understood how serious the crimes were, and they wanted to help.
That's good. So it sounds like international cooperation is really important in these cases.
Absolutely. Without it, it's almost impossible.
So how long did it take?
Well, it took a while, but Sifuentes was finally extradited back to Texas in January of 2020.
So almost 17 years after he disappeared.
Yeah. Crazy, right?
It's January 2020, and Sifuentes is back in Dallas, ready to face trial for the murders of Maria Perales, Erica Hernandez, and Veronica Hernandez. You'd think, after all this time, all the effort to get him back, he'd at least try to fight it, wouldn't you?
You would think so. I mean, this case goes back decades. You'd expect them to try and, suppress evidence, maybe even try a plea of insanity. Who knows?
Right. Different times, different methods, maybe some iffy evidence, you never know.
Yeah, it's possible. But that's not what happened at all. In May 2021, Sifuentes pleaded guilty to all 3 murders.
Wow. So after all that running, all that hiding, he just gives up. Why? What do you think made him do that?
Well, I guess he could have realized the evidence against him was too strong, Or maybe he felt guilty, finally, ready to face the consequences of his actions. Or, maybe after all those years, he just wanted it to be over.
Like he was just tired of running, tired of that life, the constant looking over his shoulder.
Yeah, it could be. Whatever the reason, it must have been a huge relief for the victims' families. They'd waited so long for justice, for some kind of closure.
I'm sure it was a lot of emotions all at once. Relief, anger, probably a lot of sadness too. Bringing all this back up.
Absolutely. It's a wound that probably never really heals.
No, it doesn't. So what was the sentence? Did he get the death penalty?
The death penalty wasn't an option in this case. He was sentenced to 3 life terms, 1 for each victim.
Wow. So he's spending the rest of his life in prison.
He is. He's currently at the Clements Unit in Amarillo.
3 life sentences. A lot of time to think about what he did.
Yeah, it is. And even though, he's behind bars, even though there's been some justice, I still wonder why. What drove him to do such horrible things?
He never said. Never explained anything.
No clear motive. And that's what's so scary, I think. We have the resolution, the conviction, the punishment. but no understanding.
Like we've got all the pieces to a puzzle, but the most important one is missing, the one that explains the picture.
Exactly. It's something we see a lot, especially with serial killers. The system can punish, but it can't always give us answers.
It's true. It really shows you how complex people are, even the darkest parts of us. And those unanswered questions, that mystery, that's what stays with you.
Yeah, it does, because even though Sifuentes is in prison, even though this is over, his actions still have an impact. All the pain and loss, it still echoes.
And for the families, well, their journal continues.
It does. They have to live with that loss, the scars, forever. I hope they can find some peace, though.
It really shows that justice is just one part of the process, and for a lot of people, the healing, it never really stops.
It's true. So what can we take away from all this? We've seen the horror of the crimes, this unbelievable escape, law enforcement that never gave up, extradition, justice. It's a wild story. It really is. It shows you how strong people can be, even when facing unimaginable loss. And it shows you the power of never giving up on the search for justice, even when it feels impossible.
It really does, and it shows that even though some cases take years, decades even, the truth always finds a way to surface. So thanks for joining us on this deep dive. It's been quite a journey, hasn't it?
He has.
We'll be back soon with another look into another fascinating case. Until then.